Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. I still have with me in the studio Professor Bola Akintarenwa, Director General, Bolitech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office, is also in here today, and Ndidi Nwaneri, Social Development Consultant. Dr. Nwaneri, Yemi Adamolekun, Professor Akintarenwa. Professor Akintarenwa, let me start with you. You listened to Professor Abubakar Siddiq Mohammed on a number of issues: national security, education, the situation in Chad and implications for Nigeria, and finally, very briefly, as he put it, Nigeria's performance with regard to COVID-19. Your take on those key issues?
I think that all the points that have been raised by Professor Siddiq can be summed up into one single sentence. That is, he has provided rationalizations, as to why the situation of insecurity in the country have existed, trying also to give his own version of the truth as distinct from the existing versions of the truth. Let's take them one by one. He gave us the impression that the media, more often than not, misrepresent information, and he tried to give examples. Now, what he is accusing the media of, he too fell victim of the same accusation. How? He said, well, some Nigerians have argued, they have complained that all those bandits, Boko Haramis that have been arrested, that they have not been prosecuted. And now the reason he gave was simply that when they are caught, the military will kill them. Can you bring a dead person for prosecution? Now for me, my observation is that, look, that is what we call hypothesis building. How is he in a position to say the military, they have been killing all those arrested? That is an exaggeration. It is at best hypothetical. So he doesn't have any scientific justification. But what many people who read newspapers, who listen to media news, they easily forget that journalists write history in a haste, and that they have to give their own reportage on the basis of what transpires. While academics have the liberty to go back home, carry out research, deep research, have more time, and explain one point in 4, 5, 6, 10 sentences. The journalists do not have that luxury. So in this case, if he says, for instance, that there was invasion in Edo State, now trying to look at the conceptualization of the word invasion, especially from its etymological sense. Now, as an academic, you will be right, but you cannot be right if it is now at the level of journalism. So from that one single point, he raised many other issues, if we have to take them one by one. But in this case, let us continue with the discussion.
Well, Dr. Nwaneri, thank you for joining us. We welcome you to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. I'm sure you also listened to Professor Abubakar Siddiq Mohammed and the issues you raised about generalizing security in Nigeria and what can be done about that, and also about the implications for the safety of schools and also the situation in Chad, and how all of that affects us and the responsibility of government. Yes, indeed.
So the Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Dr. Abati. So I'd like to respectfully disagree, first of all, with the last commentary. While I accept that journalists don't have the luxury of time, there is an element of irresponsibility and sensationalism in reporting. It was only recently that somebody pointed out that when something happens in the north, it's bandits. When it happens in the south, it's herdsmen. While I agree that there's an urgency to journalism that is not present in academic research, at the same time, I would lean more towards our guest who said that one cow and one herdsman in a school does not equal invasion. I think that was his point. So I'd like to agree with that. And there has been, historically, we do have a history of irresponsibility is a bit of a heavy word, it's a derogatory word, but journalism that could be a bit more meticulous. Now, another thing I'd like to point out is that journalism, we tend to think that it is the media talking to the public. There's also this symbiotic relationship whereby if the journalist or if the media does not produce something that resonates with the public, there will be a reduction in the attention that the audience gives to the media production or to the journalistic production. So there's also a temptation among people that produce news to produce something that resonates with the public. And if the public is into rabble-rousing and it will be receptive to drama and sensationalism, there's a tendency to move in that direction because at the end of the day, money tracks attention. So I think what the prof was, our guest, was alluding to, what he did not say, is this background of journalism that could be a bit more meticulous. And I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go into other areas unless we're discussing the other specific questions.
No, there were other specific questions you raised about insecurity in Nigeria and how the likely implosion in Chad could affect us. And then he also, of course, talked about the state of the military and the police in Nigeria in terms of facing the challenge of insecurity. And also, he talked about the safety of schools. Do we need dogs barking all over the place? Or do we need something more than that to make our schools safe? He talked about manpower. He talked about, infrastructure for security personnel.
Yes.
He talked about recruitment of more personnel.
Mm-hmm. So my approach to, one of the numbers he gave us with regards to the police personnel, the amount of policemen we actually have taking care of the society was very shocking. But of everything he said, I'm going to go into the neighboring countries later. But what has to do with Nigeria? For me, it is the schools, the issue of safe schools, the issue of national policing. It goes back to history. I feel that a lot of these problems we're encountering now comes from lack of attention on the part of the public. How do we get to a situation where we have 350,000 policemen and more than 50% of them are guarding dignitaries? How do we get to that point? How did we get there? That is one. The second thing is, historically, we've heard about inadequate funding of the police and the military. And we've never done anything about it, or we have not taken it up as citizens to say, no, this can't be. We can't have 10 policemen per, we can't have 50% of our police force paying attention to individuals even if it's in their official capacity. Why do you need 15 policemen escorting you to work and escorting you back? Why? Well, it means that the public sector has not done its job properly. If in your capacity as, I'm not going to name a post, lest I'm accused of attacking individuals, but if you look at your entourage and there are 15 policemen escorting you all over the place, then there's a problem. But this has come up historically and we did not address it. With regards to safe schools, look at the question of safe schools and look at the question of lack of control of our physical spaces. I remember when I spoke with Dr. Abati recently, I was saying how many Sambisa forests do we have in Nigeria? And by that, I mean geographical areas within local government areas that are basically blind spots that we don't have control of. They're not policed and they're fundamentally not governed. So that takes me back to the question of the power sharing in Nigeria, or the way we govern spaces. The specific reason why we have local government authorities and local government areas is to take governance to places that are not, for want of a better word, mainstream, secluded areas where you don't have fancy schools or fancy infrastructure, so that we'll be able to manage those spaces. We have dropped that ball, and we dropped that ball decades ago. Now we have large pockets where people are doing all sorts of things and we're incapable of governing them. Now, in this conversation, we have not talked about things like revamping the local government authorities, revamping the local government areas, and the question of are we in control of our spaces? How is it possible for somebody so within a state like Kaduna State to actually abduct 300 people? Until today, we cannot track them. So there's a type of failure that has happened in governing spaces that we have not engaged. We haven't engaged with that question of whether or not Nigeria as a country is in control of her spaces. This takes me back again. Look at my state. I come from Imo State. There was a particular governor we had, and for 8 years, we did not have local government chairmen. We did not have local government chairwomen. We had nobody managing the local government areas. Every local government area answered to the governor. And that happened for 8 years. So my question is, what systems do we have in place to make sure that governance gets to remote areas?
Well, on that
because
note,
governance does not get to remote areas, that is why we have the problems we have.
Well,
okay,
at
that point, I'll stop. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to go very quickly to Yemi Adamolekun. Yemi, are you with us now? Or we take a break, and then when we return, Yemi Adamolekun would have a take on this interesting subject. We'll be right back. The conversation will continue once we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to this Eladi Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News Channel. Still with me in the studio, Professor Bola Akinterenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and Ndidi Nwaneri, Social Development Consultant. Well, Yemi, let me come straight to you now to respond to some of those issues raised by Professor Abubakar Siddiq Muhammad.
Thank you. For me, I'm just a bit numb. Not numb. I'm not numb. No, I'm not numb. But I wonder what it is that we're trying to really get. I mean, I understand what the DG's, what his perspectives on it, that there are multiple layers, that there are different issues, that we shouldn't generalize. I hear Prof in saying that the benefit of academic research review is not the same that journalists have in reporting news. And then journalists now have to deal with social media, because at least in the past, if you were doing a print publication, you had a bit of time to go back and read and cross-reference stories. But now you are dealing with people who are eyewitnesses, who were there, who know that 10 people were killed, who knew that the people looked like Fulani, or they were carrying an IPOP flag, so there must be IPOP people who went to burn the flag. So we're dealing with all of that. And as my position is on this show week after week, ultimately, maybe for me, it's a failure of government and a failure of governance. And we know that. So no matter how well we dice it, how well we slice it, and we talk about citizens and inflaming reporting, when the presidency itself is issuing press statements that are inflammatory, issuing press statements that are building off rumors, we can't really go too far and blame citizens for doing exactly the same thing. And ultimately, in this dynamic of the governed and the governors, the people who have the ultimate responsibility is the governors. So as Nigerians, as we deal with kidnappings and we deal with students being killed, and we deal this morning, bandits just attacked a church, kidnapped someone, I believe, killed and kidnapped in the process. As we deal with all these issues, and the response of the government is to deflect, the response of the government is to blame, the response of the government is to say people are being smart by half, when they are being smart by half, this is what we will have. And so I think the challenge for these conversations that we're having on these platforms and many other platforms is that we need to decide as Nigerians, what is it that we want? Do we want to keep talking about possible issues or reframing the issues, or we actually want to deal with the issues? And until we're ready to have that conversation, we'll continue to have these conversations.
Well, thank you, Yemi, but I'm going to come back to you in a second as we take our next topic. The presidency has released a statement declaring support for the embattled Communications Minister, Issa Pantami, amidst calls for him to step down or be sacked from lawmakers and Nigerians at large. Presidential spokesman Garba Shehu, in his statement, said the Buhari administration stands by the minister, alleging that information and communications technology ICT companies are the ones behind calls for his removal. Well, Yemi, I'm sure you know the story very well. What do you think? Is Issa Pantami, has he really repented and his sins have been forgiven by the presidency and he can go ahead and sin no more? Is he also a victim on account of efforts that he has made as Minister of Communications and Digital Economy?
Thank you. That's the statement that I was referring to. And the story, because I really want to acknowledge it. So today, bandits attack church. This is the headline. Bandits attack church, kill medical doctor, abduct many in Kaduna. Kaduna has been under fire recently. The 3 students were students in Kaduna. On Pantami, I think the statement by the presidency is symptomatic of what I'm saying. So the headline of the statement is campaign against. Then in the statement, there was a reference to cancel culture. And then in the statement, there was a reference to now well-reported information that alleges that telco companies were trying to malign Mr. Pantami. And then the last statement of the statement reads, the administration stands behind Minister Pantami and all Nigerian citizens to ensure they receive fair treatment, fair prices, and fair protection in ICT services. So our federal government has decided to paint the picture of a man who is being held to account for his views in the context of the fact that he wants to give Nigerians fair pricing. So if that, beyond the statement being an insult to Nigerians, being an insult to our sensibilities, being an insult to our ability to read English and understand that in a country that supposedly has a rule of law, if you murder someone, you don't say, oh, I'm so sorry. It was based on my previous notion that murdering was okay. I have now come to light that murdering is a bad thing. So I humbly repent. Please forgive me. And all of us clap for you and say, oh, wonderful. You have repented. Go and sin no more. But again, let's look at it. The statement from the presidency is not very different from the statements we've heard around bandits. What are they telling us about bandits? They are aggrieved citizens. They have returned the boys they kidnapped. They have turned in their arms. So we should leave them and let them go and sin no more. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. So why are we surprised? But I think it's very critical for Nigerians as well to realize that part of the challenge we have in not understanding our country very well and not realizing that there are different worldviews in a country that's trying to be one and what that means. I was in a conversation a few days ago, and a northern gentleman who's done academic work on these issues says there's nothing that Mr. Pantami has said, that a lot of Muslim clerics don't say, that the use of the word kafir, infidel, it's par for course. It's used in that context a lot. There's academic research that's been talked about how teachings like that has changed northern Nigeria in terms of the dynamics and how people see others within the Nigerian context. Now, I'm not an academic. I'm not a historian. I am a citizen that the impact that I see is in lives that are lost. The impact that I see is in hate that is being built within the country. So if, as a cleric, it is acceptable for Pantami to have those views, then he can be a cleric. And if as a country we want to accept that, that's a different conversation. But as a federal minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it is not acceptable. Absolutely not acceptable. And it speaks to the fact of why we're in different spaces, that our presidency thinks it is acceptable, that he uses that language, that he's of that school, because his body of work will show that. But because of this particular statement that he was caught on, he has said, oh, I repent. And I'll end with this. Somebody was sort of sharing on this issue on a Twitter thread. And the point that she made that I thought was quite poignant, her name is Lena Hoffman. She said that the fact that he was arguing with, Yusuf, I forget his first name, the Boko Haram founder.
Mohammed Yusuf?
Thank you. Mohammed Yusuf, thank you. That the fact that he was arguing with Mohammed Yusuf didn't mean he was against him. He just meant that they differed on the means, but the end they agreed on. So they were debating on the means to an end, not the end itself. So look, Dr. Abati, as a country, there's beauty in diversity. There's strength in numbers. Those are things we throw apart. But we cannot run away from discussing under what conditions this beauty in diversity is going to exist. Because if your worldview is different from mine, and we are not allowed to hold those worldviews in peace, there will forever be war. And we cannot not have security in a context of injustice. And we're living in a country of injustice day and night. And we must be ready to have this conversation, because otherwise, more kids will be kidnapped, more people will be killed, and we'll still continue to talk until the center cannot hold us anymore.
Okay, Yemi, thank you very much. Indeed, just be on standby. I'll come to you immediately after this break. Here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. When we return, the program will continue. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Professor Bola Akintenwa is still here, Yemi Adamolekun, and Ndidi Nwaneri. Ndidi, quickly, your comments on the controversy around Sheikh Issa Pantami, the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy.
Thank you. My position is that the minister should either be fired or should honorably resign. And I have 3 reasons. I'm going to start with the mildest ones. When all of this broke, so unfortunately in Nigeria, everything is politicized. Everything is reduced to, not what is being said, but where is the speaker from? Right? So all the strikes against me include my gender, my religion, whether or not I come from north or south of the Niger, which is really tragic. But I'm going to go into the reasons why he should be fired, and I'll start with the mildest one. When all of this was going on, he made a comment on social media, Facebook specifically, where he led to threats to Deji Akinyoju's life. And when he was asked that, when people said to him, this is in poor taste, he removed it and claimed that some boys hacked into his account. Now, don't forget, this is the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is saying to us that his social media account was hacked into. Now, the second reason why he should no longer hold that office is in the campaign for there was the Pantami will not resign and Pantami will stay campaign, it turns out that one of the tweets came from the official account of the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy. So that meant that he was trying to counter a campaign, and the counter campaign was so badly put together that it actually came out. So he was trying to make it look as if people were supporting him. And he is so incompetent that this campaign came out from an official Twitter account, which shouldn't have been. And I'm like, how is this person holding this position? But the third reason why he should resign is because I don't think Nigerians really understand the gravity, or a lot of us don't understand the digital economy. We don't understand the digital world. We don't understand the cyber world. Anybody, and then Pantami should be clear. The reason we're asking him to resign, and I'd like to say this, the reason the calls for his resignation, is not the views he holds. He can hold any view. You don't even know the views I hold. I can hold all sorts of views. The problem is not his views, but what he is. And the risk is this. If he is in charge of Nigeria's digital world, that means he's in charge, for instance, of classified information. He's part of the cabinet. And you have said to us that you have showed us what you made bold to say that Osama bin Laden is a better Muslim than you are. And at that point, that means that everything in Nigeria that you have access to, we're not sure whether or not you're going to give it to Boko Haram or a representative of ISIS or something. So I think that risk is too great for us to bear. Now, it has nothing to do with our religion or what. It just has to do with state security. There's a 20% chance that Pantami will not do this. But that there's an 80% chance that he will not, and the 20% chance, or even a 10% chance that he can raise the safety of Nigeria as a country, right? And I think even a 2% chance is too much of a risk. There's too much at stake. This is a whole country of 200 million people. I am sure Gombe State can find another person that can represent them at the cabinet level. Number one. Number two, the first question that came up for me when this broke was, how did Pantami get past Senate screening? How did he get past the processes that we have put in place in Nigeria to make sure that we accurately screen people who are going to hold public office? A journalist actually preceded that thought and asked a senator how that happened. I think we should ask questions of the people that screened him. Now, the story from the Senate is that the Senate can only act on security reports that come to them from DSS and other security agencies. But I feel that those documents are still there. And I really feel that we should go and scrutinize those documents because, you know, if Nigeria says never again, we should mean never again for processes and not for results. And I'm going to stop there so I don't hog the space.
Prof,
thank you.
Your input on the Insecurity case.
Let me begin by agreeing very well with both Yemi and Ndidi. Ndidi cannot be more correct in this particular case, especially by differentiating between the viewpoints of Pantami and what he really is. That is the issue. Please, in coming to the area where I take my distance from Ndidi's point of view and Professor Siddiq, let me quote what the journalists have
Prof,
said.
you are taking us back.
No.
I had closed that subject.
No. Hold on.
You want to take over the program?
Not at all. I'm not taking over. What the journalists have said are not misrepresented is this. I quote, "Oh God, give victory to the Taliban and to Al-Qaeda. This jihad is an obligation for every single believer, especially in Nigeria." End of quote. Now, that's Pantami. Ndidi rightly pointed out that in this case, Patami is a proponent, an advocate. If you want to look at his person, either from the perspective of a physiognomy or physiologically, you know, he appears to have a terroristic blood running in his vein. To say that you are younger, you are not mature by the time you had that extremist viewpoint, the blood flowing in your system, have you changed that? It's not. So I agree with her. But if I disagree, it's on the basis of jihad. Professor Siddiq told us that if people do understand the implication, the meaning of jihad, then we wouldn't be talking about what we are saying. I'm trying to link this one to the conception of invasion. You see, all that are said, either by journalists, by scholars, as I have come up with the idea of academic journalism, everybody is interpreting what has been said. Yemi has interpreted. Ndidi has interpreted. Siddiq has done the same thing. Your own interpretation does not necessarily reflect the 100% truth. So whatever reporters, journalists say, it is just to let you have an idea. You cannot tell me that because they said Northerners, Fulanis, or whoever invaded Edo, that there was no attack. By the time you are interpreting invasion, you are simply trying to say that, look, it is not holistic. There are not many people. You cannot use one case to make a general case. That's what you are simply saying. So in this case, for Patami, I subscribe to the idea, the suggestion, not just on the basis of the 3 points raised by Ndidi. There are many other reasons as to why Patami should not be there. Let me tell you, Ndidi referred to the Senate discussion. He forgot to add that the same question was put to the former director of DSS, Dennis Amakri, who revealed that, look, when appointments are to be made, there must be security clearance. And that the investigation on Patami was normally carried out. It was there. But he explained very diplomatically that, look, you have the political interest approach. In which case, when, for instance, security reports are given to the senators or those people who are going to decide, what happens is that they will say, well, for reasons of either federal character or political or religion, etc., they will say, we will appoint him. So in this case, that's what has happened.
Well, Prof, footnote. The person involved, Mr. Dennis Amakre, retired as an assistant director of the Department of State Services. The DSS has also said that, well, through Peter Afunanya, who is the current spokesperson of the Department of State Services, that Mr. Amakre was expressing a personal opinion and that does not represent the position of the DSS. But let's move on to our next topic. And Prof, I'm going to come to you on this subject. Former Chadian President Idris Deby Itno has been buried after being killed on Monday from wounds he suffered while leading troops in a battle against rebels in the northern part of the country. The 30-year ruler of the African country was killed a day after he was declared the winner of a system in office. Deby, who came to power in a rebellion in 1990, took 79.3% of the vote in the April 11th election, which was boycotted by top opposition leaders. He was expected to give a victory speech to supporters, but his campaign director said the 68-year-old had instead gone to visit Chadian soldiers on the front lines. Following his death, Deby's son, General Mahamat Deby, was named interim head of state. Opposition politicians in Chad have rejected the army's appointment of President Idris Deby's son, saying Chad is not a monarchy. Mahamat Idris Deby was in charge of the Presidential Guard and will now lead the country for 18 months until elections. Experts say the move is unconstitutional and the Speaker of Parliament should take over when a sitting president dies. However, the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, who was at the funeral, supports the military takeover. Well, Professor Akintenewa, this is right down your alley. Over to you. We have just 2 minutes before we take a break.
There are too many issues in that particular statement you've given. First, the position of France. France initially argued that the parliament, the speaker, should take over as provided for in the Chadian constitution. But if France changed position, the Elysee government has explained that the parliamentary speaker was asked to take over, but he did refuse to take over because of the situation of insecurity. And in this case, since the constitutional, the eligible candidate has refused, in this case, there wouldn't be any choice than to go along with the choice by the military. But the question remains, why Muhammad, the son, and not any other general? Question one. Another issue, Professor Siddiq made us to understand that Idris Deby Itno had tried to stabilize the polity, that before he took over, the country was not stable. So, in this particular case, there's an element of truth in that. But the issue is not as simple as that. There is a lot of mistrust in the Chadian military. The Chadian military is divided against itself. That is why, for instance, Idris Deby is all. That is why he is the one leading the military, going to the war front, not allowing any other person there because he didn't trust them. And then, you see...
Well, Prof, on that note, let's take another quick break here on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. The program will continue when we return. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Professor Bola Akintenewa is still here. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, is also here, and Ndidi Nwaneri. Well, before we went on that break, Prof, you were commenting, and I had to take that break. If you could just summarize very quickly on the situation in Chad.
Let me simply just draw attention to one critical point that is often ignored by observers. It is the fact that Idris Deby Itno is from an ethnic minority, Sagoa, which the community extends to Darfur in Sudan. Because Professor Siddiq tried to say that Itno had tried to stabilize, we need to remind our viewers that, look, it was Libya precisely that aided and abetted the coup that brought Deby in.
Well, okay, point well made. Very quickly, Ndidi Nwaneri, your views as regards the security situation in Chad.
I am going to discuss this in the context of the relationship that France has with Francophone African countries, and the fact that Nigeria is completely surrounded by such countries. Also, with I'm going to tie my comment to the issue around the Chad Basin. From where I'm sitting, so I don't have proof, right? But from where I'm sitting, this looks like a coup. It looks as if, because we don't have any news about how Deby died, what kind of, was he shot? I mean, was there, how did it's just shrouded in mystery. We do not know what happened. Now, a day before, now don't forget that he has run the country for 30 years. A day before he had won the election, as he usually did, And he had amended the constitution to be in power to 2033, right? So, and then I like the comment that Prof made about how 1 minute France had a particular position. The next minute, Macron is actually at the funeral. Let's not forget that we're still in the third wave of COVID, but it was important enough to Macron for him to attend this funeral. So the question now is, and then what transpired? So it looks like a military coup to me. Now, my concern is what this means, and Prof has already alluded to this, what this means for security around Chad, what this means for our problem with insurgency in Nigeria, and time it will play out. I don't know how much power we have over the situation, but I think it's a situation that we should watch very closely, because if Chad falls apart, it's going to, if control, it doesn't matter who has control, but control needs to be maintained in that region if we're going to keep control, or if we're going to build on whatever gains we have made with regards to the insurgency in the northeast. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay, Yemi, very quickly before we take our final topic, which is on COVID-19. Yemi Adamolekun.
Thank you. I was just would align with what Ndidi just said. I think Macron's presence and Buhari's absence was quite significant. And for those following African politics or West Africa, the politics of the continent and in the region, it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Well, very quickly, finally, Nigeria has vaccinated more than 1 million people out of the 4.4 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines and other vaccines from MTN and from other donations that the country received. And the government is insisting that vaccines are the way out of the pandemic, despite global concern about adverse reactions. The Minister of Health, Osage Ehanire, says plans are underway to license other vaccines when approved by the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. Our rights correspondent, Uvieteme George, tells us more. Well, okay, we don't have that footage, but very quickly, let me come to you, Yemi Adamolekun, on the vaccination process and the suspension and the promise that the second phase will begin sometime in May.
Well, I mean, there are two things I would say. Number one is the fact that we're on the receiving end of donations. Anyway, the pathway for when we would get more is not quite clear, even though they said the second round will begin in May. They had said 3 months earlier, so it's good that it's moving forward. In the US, Johnson & Johnson has gotten a pass to continue. As they said, the side effects or the benefits outweigh the possible harm. So that's good news. That means Johnson & Johnson is back possibly on the donations that we could get. And then thirdly, I think, is what's happening in India, a third wave, and sort of speculations that Nigeria might also suffer a third wave because we've not taken this thing but quite seriously. And that's the truth of the matter. So with the sense that things have quote unquote gone back to normal for the most part, I'm not quite sure how a government would come back and want to sort of rein people's freedoms back. So we're a bit more mindful so that people don't get ill. Our borders are open, people are traveling, limited number of people are vaccinated. So yeah, the next couple of weeks and months should prove quite interesting.
Okay, Ndidi, we have just about 2-3 minutes to go. Your take on this?
Thank you. My first question is, are we really 200 million in this country? That's number one. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. But if we are 200 million, let's not forget that we've been vaccinating for 6 weeks. And the result is that we have vaccinated 1 million people. So there isn't vaccine hesitancy, there's vaccine refusal. And another question I'd like to ask is, and that is what we need to bear in mind, that how are we going to get people? How are we going to get people to get on the page to start accepting the vaccines? Because we're trying to get herd immunity. What herd immunity means is that 70% of adults in the population, so the global population, 70% have to get immunized, then that way we know that we have really started the process of stamping out coronavirus in the world. So that means that every country's target is 70%. That means at least 40 million Nigerians. In 6 weeks, we've only hit 1 million. That means that people are not taking it. I don't know how we're going to get past that bump. And one of the mistakes the government made, in my opinion, is this obsession with politicians, right? The people that got in the PR move, this is the last point I'm going to make. In the PR move, the direction was to give the vaccine to dignitaries, the people classified as dignitaries and political leaders. Maybe the PR move wasn't well thought out. Maybe they should have done music stars and artists
thank you
instead of the politicians. I'm going to stop there because we've run out of time. Thank you.
We'll be able to take. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.